Okay, so here you can see I have my timer going, my shutter release, my TR90, and basically it's taking a picture after every 10 seconds. Another picture just went off. We can see the light right here showing that a picture is being taken, and basically I'm getting a time lapse of the sunrise. Now, I've said in a previous video that it's never a good idea to point your camera directly at the sunlight unless you have a solar filter, because that intense light from the sun will damage the sensor. So what I've done to mitigate that is that I have my ND filter, my variable ND filter, and basically as the sun gets brighter and brighter, I'll be changing these settings. So after it takes a picture, at a given point in time, I'll just change the setting, and basically the ND filter will get darker and darker so that the sensor isn't damaged. At a certain point, I'm going to have to stop taking pictures, because once the sun starts changing from red to yellow or white, I will not be able to point the camera directly at the sun anymore without a solar filter, because that's going to damage the sensor. But at this point, because the sun is so low on the horizon, then what's happening is that not all the rays are able to travel through the atmosphere. Just the light rays that have a wavelength in the upper region. I don't want to get too technical, but basically light has different wavelengths. So the blues and the greens, they have a smaller wavelength, and the reds, they have a longer wavelength. So traveling through the thick atmosphere, the reds are able to do that, but the blues and greens and so on, or violets, they're not able to. So once it goes above the horizon and it has less, the sun's rays have less atmosphere to travel through, then all those blues and greens are going to get through, and then the sun is going to appear more yellow or white, and that's when I'm going to have to stop pointing the camera at the sun or switch to a solar filter. Now, as you can see, I have the camera set on automatic. And the reason why I have it set on automatic is that I'd like the camera to keep adjusting the aperture as well as, maintain the focus, so that all the pictures come out with a consistent focus. And of course, as I go ahead and turn the ND filter, as the sun gets brighter and I adjust that ND filter, then automatically the camera will adjust the aperture settings to compensate. So if you're doing a time lapse like this of the sun, then definitely you want to use automatic mode. So here's a different scenario. At the beach, I did not use the external battery and the EP5C power brake adapter because I had to ride my bike 3/4 of a mile from the parking lot to the inlet. Besides, I had nowhere on my bike to place that huge battery, so I used the camera's internal battery. Also, the sun moves relatively quickly across the sky, so a fully charged battery was more than enough to take a picture every 11 seconds for 44 minutes, so I was good where that was concerned. On this occasion, however, things would be different. I'll be taking pictures for a much longer period, so in this situation I definitely needed the external power, as the internal battery would definitely not last that long. The plan was to zoom in on this leaf and do a time lapse of the water drops drying up, so let's go. This time lapse highlights perfectly why you would want to do a time lapse sometimes instead of doing a video. First of all, a video uses up a lot of space on your memory card and the camera consumes a lot of power during the process. Also, when something changes very slowly, in order to perceive the change, you have to speed up the video too much. Taking a sequence of photos at an interval that will allow you to perceive that change and then combining those images to make a time-lapse movie is the best solution. This time lapse of the night sky could have been much better, but I decided to include this video as is to illustrate to you how difficult it is to get the night sky time-lapse correct, regardless of which camera you're using. So here are the things that worked against me. First of all, there was too much light pollution, given that I was doing this in the city. As such, the city lights were bouncing off the moisture in the air and brightening the sky. So instead of having a black sky, I had a dark blue sky with inconsistent lighting. Also, even though I was using manual focus, the tiny screen on the camera did not allow me to see the sharpest image on such a dark subject. Next time, I would probably take a monitor or some HDMI goggles with me and plug it into the HDMI port so that I can fine-tune the focus on that image. Also, if you notice here, the ISO is at 6400. What I should have done was set the ISO manually, because the camera will always adjust the ISO to get the best exposure. However, the camera doesn't know that I'm taking a picture of the stars. It thinks I'm taking a picture of the electric pole and the trees. So when doing celestial photography, your best bet is to make all the manual adjustments and then take a test picture. If you don't have an external monitor, press this button to review the picture, then use the zoom buttons to crop your view. You can use the arrows to move across a picture and look at different objects like a star, for example. If the star is in focus, then you're good to go and you can start your time lapse. If it's not, keep adjusting the focus until you get it right. If you get the right focus but the picture is noisy, what most people would refer to as grainy, then the ISO is too high. Change it to about 800 or 1000 and then set your aperture to its widest. If you still see noise in the test picture, keep lowering the ISO by 100 after each test picture until the noise goes away. If the stars appear too bright, keep increasing the shutter speed and taking test pictures until the brightness from the stars is just right. Once you have the perfect picture, you can start doing your time lapse. Here's an example of me getting the focus right. This is actually a combination of two pictures though. Usually the moon is too bright for you to include it in the picture with the stars. So what I did is that in the first picture I got the trees and the stars. Then I took a separate picture of the moon. However, I did zoom in on the moon, and this is why it looks so unusually big. After that, I used my video editing software to add the moon to the first picture. If you have any questions regarding time lapses or celestial photography, please post your question in the comment section below. You can also find a link to my video editing software below.